Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Welcome to the last episode of the year for the drawing board. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe down below. Become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. A bunch of interviews on the way for the off-season, the NRL off-season, so make sure you get stuck straight into it. Subscribe down below. All of our socials, the Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that will all be below as well. Let's get stuck straight in to our top scoring player for both fantasy and SuperCoach. Now, we've talked about this guy all year as the player of the season for NRL, regardless of SuperCoach and fantasy. Just talking about NRL and actual form, we've talked about this bloke as the player of the year. A lot of people have talked about him as the player of the year, and that is Jahrome Hughes. He scored 187 in SuperCoach, 97 in fantasy. He is the SuperCoach and fantasy GOAT this year. He has been the top scorer since we sort of changed the format for the post, which I think has been about 4 weeks ago, which is just absolutely insane. He's absolutely killed it. I am so happy I brought him in. I think if there is one positive that I can highlight amongst all of the other positives for this year for SuperCoach and NRL Fantasy, it is Jahrome Hughes. Bringing him into this side when there was a lot of doubt around him due to injury. It was a big risk because at the stage where we brought him in to this side, there was a lot of question marks around his fitness, obviously coming back from a few injuries earlier on in the season. But he comes and he has probably one of the better back ends of the season. And pretty much you look at his whole season, he has had the best season. He's the informed player currently in the NRL. And look, as I said, what a way to end the year for him to score, obviously the highest in SuperCoach and NRL Fantasy to finish the year. What a way to end the year. In terms of our overall scores to finish off the year, our final score for NRL Fantasy was 761. Look, it's lower than what we have got. We were obviously in the 800, 900 conversation before this week. Unfortunately, a few low scores from some of those other guys and a few poor choices from myself in terms of putting some guys in, I believe, as well. I actually didn't have too much of choice. Radley was injured. Burton was injured. Stone Street was out. Dave Fafita was out. So that was my emerging. So didn't really have too much choice as to who my guys were. Bostock got 0 for fantasy as well, which didn't help at all. Howarth got 23. A few other low scores in here as well. 27 for Manu, which isn't realistically ideal at all. Fletcher Sharp, 34, 23 for KO Weeks, 26 for Kiraz. Those sort of score lines hurt us, and at the end of the day, it is pretty much what cost us as well. As for SuperCoach, I am very happy with this end to the year. 1,326 actually. 1,326 to end the year. We had 63K left in the bank. Not that matters too much now. Obviously, we made a big call here bringing Tyron Wishart into the side and played him. It's not the worst call. We did get a higher score from Fanua Pole, and that is, I guess, the only real regret of the back end of the season, this last game. We had Tom Trbojevic as a reserve. We forgot to take him off because he wasn't playing this week. We could have had the extra 50 points there from Fanua Pole, which would have taken us to 1,376. But unfortunately, we don't get those extra points. Actually, no, it wouldn't have because we got the 41 there. Oh, no, yes, it would because Tom Trbojevic didn't play. I confused myself then. But yeah, super unfortunate the way that ended in that regard. But in terms of the overall, I guess, round for us for SuperCoach, 79 for Eli Katoa, 89 for Angus Crichton here as well, just reading off straight off the SuperCoach website. 100 for Harry Grant, 187 for Jahrome Hughes, the highest scorer, 82 for Jaden Campbell, 140 for James Tedesco. We captained him as well, so doubled that. 280 there for James Tedesco. 53 for Jamin Salmon, 62 for Kale Ito. Had some nice scores in and around there, which obviously contributed to a massive, massive week of 1,326. Even Tallis Duncan finishing off the year strong too with a score of 55. Not too bad there at all. Very happy with how this season ended in terms of our overall scores. Let's move now to a little bit of a different post template. The 2024 season review, the official review, did a little bit of a summary of each of our years, just going through the positives and maybe one negative there for fantasy. But in regards to some of the stats, I only got two here. The overall rank for both SuperCoach and NRL Fantasy. Our fantasy rank at the end of the year overall in the whole country was 43,163. Doesn't sound pretty, but it's pretty decent, to be honest. Obviously, then for SuperCoach, 44,523. We're improving. I'm sure that was a lot lower. We were a lot lower on the scale there for both fantasy and SuperCoach last year. We are improving, especially at the back end of the year. I only look at this as a positive. I've never come in and said that I'm the best SuperCoach player in the world. Never once come in and said that in my entire year of playing this, or however long I've come in and played this. That's never really been the intention of this podcast here for SuperCoach or NRL Fantasy. The intention's been pretty clear. I've made it pretty clear throughout the year. It is literally just a battler like one of you guys who isn't a rugby league guru, or a Tim Williams who's won before. Obviously, all of these other SuperCoach experts and stuff like that on SuperCoach Instagram, the NRL Fantasy shows and stuff like that. That's not me. I'm simply a battler. It's only been playing this for about 3 or 4 years now, and is just trying to get the hang of it, and obviously taking you on that journey. That is the whole reasoning behind the drawing board. It's why it's called the drawing board, because after each round we go back to the drawing board. We go through our mistakes. We try and improve. And that is the whole emphasis on why the drawing board was created, the reason the drawing board was created. Our highest scores of the year, bit of a positive note there. Highest score for fantasy was 912. Pretty decent score fantasy-wise. As for SuperCoach, 1,502 was our highest score, which is a beautiful score. One of the highest scores of that round 26 week, I think that would have been in. But really, really solid score there, and very happy to end on the 1,300 as well. It just shows how we're improving on that SuperCoach front. I think we'll be better for the run going into next year. I sort of know what players work, what players sort of don't now as well. So when we're picking the team next year as well, I'm not just going at it and picking randoms. I'm actually, strategically trying to put this side together based on salary cap, but also based on what I've done this year, what's worked this year, stuff like that. That's how we're sort of going to shape these sides, and obviously taking notes from this season as well going into next year. But the little spiel here, I'll read it out to you before we finish up here on our fantasy review, is huge year for us, filled with plenty of improvement at the back end of the season. Harsh end, but plenty to be happy about and plenty to think about going into the 2025 season. One regret was not getting Isaiah Yeo sooner. That's one thing I will say there for fantasy. Wish I got Isaiah Yeo sooner. He's an absolute cheat code. And towards the back end of the year, he played some of his best football we've ever seen from Isaiah Yeo. Wish I got him sooner. But other than that, we tried our best and did much better than previous seasons. And as I said, that is the goal of the drawing board each year. We just want to do better than the previous year and get better. Slow trajectory there. Couldn't pronounce my words then, but just slowly improving. That is the goal here of the drawing board. As for SuperCoach, massive year for us, getting some top-notch scores by the end of the year. Had an extremely tough run during and after the Origin period, but we climbed back, making some massive trades and averaged higher week by week, leading to a high score at the end of the year to end the year on a high. That, again, is just the whole emphasis behind the drawing board here. Very happy with the end of the season. Jerome Hughes, highest scorer for both apps to finish the year. It is literally how you would have written it up. He is currently the best player in the competition for me, regardless of SuperCoach and Fantasy. In regards to NRL chat here, we're not talking about Fantasy SuperCoach anymore. In regards to NRL chat at the moment, he's the best player this season. He has to get player of the year. Otherwise, the system is rigged for me. I know a lot of people are saying Tedesco. It's got to be Jerome Hughes. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, though. That was the last episode of the drawing board. Make sure you click down below and subscribe. We have got plenty of interviews coming during this off season. We're going to try and get some players on as well. We've got 2 pages already lined up, ready to go. 2 very well-known pages as well, which we're going to speak to. One, obviously, that we've had on the podcast before, and one I've been trying to get on the podcast for a while. That's finally agreed. after a lot of attempts to get him on the podcast. We will definitely get a few more interviews lined up for you guys as well. It's going to take some time, but we are really going to try and get more than 2 interviews like we did at the last off season. It was just harder because I was less well known. Not many people were answering my messages, and if they were just leaving me on scene and stuff like that. So, you're going to try and make that push, try and get a few more people on, go through my connections as well, and just see what I can get. But I promise you that we will be having more than 2 interviews this off season. So leave any suggestions in the comment section below as well. It massively helps as to who you want to see on the podcast, who you want to see interviewed, whether they're a rugby league personality or not. Happy to just really broaden the spectrum and interview some really key people and guys that you want to see on the podcast as well. So make sure you leave those suggestions below. Subscribe to the podcast as well. We will see you guys in the next one.